So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very special event. The Faculty of Law is really thrilled to have this opportunity to partner with Torys LLP, and very grateful to Dany Assaf in particular for hatching this idea, broaching it with us, and then bringing us on board, being able to co-host. My name is Jutta Brunet. I'm the Dean of the faculty, and I have the pleasure in that capacity to work with our globally recognized legal scholars, our amazing staff, our change makers and leaders of the future, and our incredible students. And I think a few of all of those groups are here tonight, and so consider yourself warmly acknowledged. We thank you all for attending and helping us illustrate what makes the faculty so special, and also one of the top places to think critically about international law in the world. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathering on land that for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to be able to meet and work on this land. Let's continue to be mindful of ways in that we can positively contribute to the path of reconciliation. Now, we've had a wonderful year at the faculty celebrating the 75th anniversary of the modern Faculty of Law. And it seems hard at this point in the year. We just had a wonderful event 3 weeks ago at the faculty. It seems hard to top things, but I think we might be able to do just that tonight. And I'm delighted to introduce this event that celebrates one of our faculty legends, Professor Michael J. Trebilcock. His work and his presence as a teacher, a friend, a mentor, a colleague to generations, literally, of students and also faculty colleagues. All of that has had such an extraordinary impact on us and has contributed so much to our faculty and, in fact, the university. So we're very lucky to have you here with us in the city tonight, Michael, and we are really grateful for your continued engagement with us at the law school. A very warm welcome also to Professor William Kovacic, who's a global authority in antitrust law and, among other things, a former chairman of the Federal Trade Commission in the United States. And so who better to engage in conversation with Michael Trebilcock at this moment of great uncertainty in the global trading system and in the US-Canada relationship, and on and on and on. So thank you also very much for being here tonight. And last, but certainly not least, my great pleasure to introduce our host and moderator, Dany Assaf, a partner here at Torys. And once again, thank you for getting the ball rolling so we could have this really special evening here. Dany, we're proud to claim him as one of ours. He graduated from the faculty in 1994 and has built, it's almost needless to say, a reputation as one of the country's leading or country's leaders in foreign investment, competition, and antitrust law. He's the co-chair of Torys Competition and Foreign Investment Review Practice, and he advises on international and domestic clients on all aspects of competition law and foreign investment matters. He has truly astoundingly broad international business experience, advising and helping businesses grow worldwide, and he also sits on the board of the Conference Board of Canada. He is a member of the American Bar Association's Thought Leadership and Antitrust and Academia Task Force. So there is a connection here between the law school and our academic way of doing things and the real world, as we like to say. And he is very used to sharing his knowledge with with members of his industries, his way of thinking forward into the future of the industry as well, and lectures to students on competition and foreign investment at universities across Canada. And I could go on. I will just add maybe one more thing. He's also an award-winning author. and he can be regularly heard if you like what you hear tonight, CBC, CTV, and on and on and on. So I'm really delighted, Dany, to turn things over to you for what is bound to be a special evening.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. It's a very special occasion here for me and for all of us. And just to give a little more context of what we're doing, and the pleasure of having and honoring one of our very own and one of the greatest minds in this country on competition policy and beyond, Michael Trebilcock, but also to have Bill Kovacic here, who chairs. So this started just to give you a little sense of how, the beauty of community, let's say, of how this all comes together with our dear connection to the law school and our dear connection to Michael and to academia and our friends in the United States. So I have the pleasure of sitting on this Thought Leadership Task Force, which Bill is the co-chair of, and of course being one of the preeminent commentators and thought leaders, one of the prolific writers in this area and beyond as well. I remember in one meeting perhaps, I said, we need to do something in Canada. I'm the only Canadian on this task force.
Something good.
Something good. Exactly. Thank you, Bill, for clarifying.
Yep.
And honestly, before I could finish my sentence, Bill said, Michael Trebilcock, we need to honor and we need to capture this icon of Canadian academia and thought leadership in competition policy and beyond. And I said, great idea. And then immediately it came to mind that I had to call my friends at the law school, Josh Morrison, one of my collaborators here at the Future of Law Lab, and then of course the dean, who's now become, I would like to call a friend as well, in different capacities dealing with one. And again, without hesitation, this is something we must do, and we must roll it into the university's 75th anniversary as well. So we come together with Michael and his over 60 years of contribution, and we only want to think of you as a Canadian. We don't want to think of anything before that. He joined the faculty in 1972, 60 years. It's just an extraordinary, extraordinary career, and he's touched so many. And then we think exactly what is it that we are benefiting today in these tumultuous times. It's true. And what do you do? What do you do in these times? The refuge, the anchor, we come back, we hang on to what? Substance and wisdom. And we try to think our way through things. And this is what's represented here today. There's a proverb or something out there many people have heard. It says, seek knowledge in youth so you can share it with age. And we are here today to benefit from great knowledge and great wisdom from these two wonderful gentlemen, and in particular to be able to capture for today, and it will continue through our knowledge capture initiative in the American Bar Association and this task force. It's being recorded so that it can be shared and touch even more people across the world. So thank you, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to these two wonderful minds. And I'm like the winger with, now we don't use Wayne Gretzky anymore because of, so we say Connor McDavid and Draisaitl because I'm from Edmonton, and then you could put any random winger with them and the puck will go in off of them. So that's kind of like
Mahovlich and David Keon. Yeah,
it's the unknown winger, but yes, I hope I can put the puck in the net when required.
No.
Please, Bill.
Dany, I'm enormously grateful to you because you're the one who made this possible.
Thank you.
And this was your vision, and I'm thrilled that we're here. I'm so thrilled to be here to honor Michael and to talk about Michael's invaluable contributions to our field. And Dean, thank you. I think it's unmistakably a certifying mark of a great university to honor and respect the people who helped create that greatness. So what a tradition to build and carry on for UT. It bodes so well for a further great future. How do you situate the work of a single person in a larger body of work? There have been wonderful people who've worked in the field of competition, regulation, and affiliated areas that have taken so much of Michael's professional attention. They're truly good people. It's a exceedingly good cohort. But how do you take someone who, my strong claim to would be there's none better. There's been none better in my lifetime. And I think a bit of pleasure that we can all enjoy is that we saw that happen. I think it was Joni Mitchell, who said, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what it's got till it's gone." She was a legal scholar, too. But she was wrong, because it doesn't always go that way. There are times in a lifetime where you see the greatness right in front of you. As Dany suggested, I'm a prisoner of sport. It's all that I cared of until recently. And part of the wonderful part of being a fan of sport is that you have a vivid memory of people who were great, and you can talk to your friends and say, "Isn't it magnificent that we saw this person do this?" Yes. Well, we all got to watch Michael's work, and there was no question about the greatness. There was no later hit yourself on the forehead realization that, my God, there goes one of the best who ever lived. I think we knew that at each step of the way, which is part of the joy of being here. My strong claim is that there's never been anybody better. I'm thinking of an interview that I read of the head of the art collection at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, and the journalist asked, "Do you have the best collection of art in the world?" He said, "Well, there are a lot of good ones. I mean, that's hard to say." And he paused for a moment and said, "I can assure you of one thing. We are not the second." and when I think of Michael's work across the field, he is not the second. And it's not as though he's further down the list. Nobody surpasses him. And I think we'll get a feeling of that tonight. So Michael, welcome, and thank you for being here with us this evening. We thought that we'd start with a little bit of a biographical tour to ask Michael about a couple of highlights that led him into this career, led him into the path, into the academy, as we'll see tonight, and so many other paths that created a synapse between the world of theory and practice in a powerful way. But as you think of your personal journey, if you can simply single out a couple of events that really changed your life, that put you in the direction that you pursued over these decades.
Well, thank you, Bill, for those excessively flattering remarks. Trying to think of cataclysmic events that turned my career around. I think it was a growing recognition that in the areas of interest to me, I needed to know some economics. And I studied law in New Zealand. It was a first degree. It was mainly taught by adjuncts with few choices of courses. So I knew very little law, never mind economics.
That's it.
But I moved to the University of Adelaide in Australia, and one way or another was appointed to a government task force to reform consumer protection laws. This was in the 1960s. Well, I'm a commercial lawyer, but I know nothing about how to regulate markets, right? Regulate markets, what are they talking about? But I started to read the literature, mainly American literature, and I realized that we couldn't make sensible recommendations, abolishing all creditors' remedies, putting tight caps on interest rates and so on, without knowing what the economic effects of these proposed measures were. So I and my family, a member of which is here tonight, Catherine Stenberg, and a wonderful husband, Bill Schnoor, we moved to Canada, and I think it was absolutely the best decision I and I think the family ever made, right? But when we arrived here, competition policy reform was the big issue, right? So it was not consumer protection reform, it was competition policy reform. And very few law schools at that time even taught competition law. and I was elected a vice president of the Consumers Association of Canada, which was then a very lively, prominent organization. And they appointed me to be sort of their lobbyist for a stronger, more effective competition law. So I said, okay, who else is that?
Yeah.
But I started to feel nervous. I knew no economics, right? So in the middle of this endless process of competition policy reform, and I should add here, Bill Kovacic was a wonderful visitor over many round tables we ran at the University of Toronto, and I've known Bill for 30 or more years.
Easily.
So I decided, along with a friend and colleague, to enroll in this 1 month immersion course at the University of Rochester, organized by Henry Manny, Economics for Law Professors, 1974. And then in 1976, I was fortunate to be appointed a fellow in law and economics at the University of Chicago. And we moved there, the whole family, for a year. And I turned myself into a student again in my early 30s. I audited courses by Ronald Coase, Gary Becker, George Stigler, Milton Friedman occasionally.
Wow.
Occasional appearances. And that was the first cataclysm in my life. It turned my academic life around.
You have a fascinating experience in what we would call perhaps the world of developing market economies as well, that provided such a direction for your work. Papua New Guinea, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, this was, I would say, the second turning point in my career, right? I'd had this University of Chicago immersion, right? You know, markets almost always work, governments almost always fail. I think an early graduate.
Don't have to know any more than that, do you?
That's it, exactly.
I think one of my early graduate students reminded me, I handed him, when he was writing his thesis, Milton Friedman's book, Capitalism and Freedom. He said, I told him, this is all you need to know. Then Papua New Guinea came along. Papua New Guinea, 6 years later, 1982, 6 years after Chicago. Papua New Guinea at that time was a small, population-wise, 3 million people, island state south of the equator. One of the poorest and most traditional societies on the face of the earth. And not economists, but anthropologists. Margaret Mead and Bronislaw Malinowski had done some of their most path-breaking research there. So an economist friend of mine who was visiting at the U of T said, I saw this little ad in The Economist for scholars interested in land compensation. I said, well, I know nothing about that. Well, he said, I know how to value properties that the government is expropriating. So I said, let's put in a letter to this research institute. I heard nothing for weeks, and then somebody called me from Papua New Guinea in the middle of the night, said, we want you out here.
When can you start?
So Jack Canach, my friend, and I went out for 3 weeks, and then they invited me to return for a year, the following year. And that was a earth-shattering experience.
Was it a little bit scary to leave Toronto and I'm going to Papua New Guinea? I don't think there was a UT equivalent in Papua New Guinea. A much different environment. Was that a bit frightening?
It was, and it was a dramatic antidote to the University of Chicago, right? In Papua New Guinea, nothing worked the way the University of Chicago people said it should, right?
Uh-huh.
Neither governments nor markets, right?
Yeah.
And I was the interim research director of an independent research institute. And I did various studies while I was there. And I traveled widely throughout the country. I drove up from Leh on the north coast up to Mount Hagen in the northern province and interviewed people along the way in their plantations over their kitchen tables.
Mind you, this is not paved highway, super expressway, easy traveling.
No.
A Jeep.
It's kind of a perilous drive in a Jeep, right? Stopping along the way. So this was my introduction to law and development. And I initiated a program or a course in law and development, and one of my close collaborators over the years, Mariana Prado from Brazil, is here tonight. She and I have co-taught the law and development course for more than 15 years, written 2 books together, several papers. But it all began with Papua New Guinea. But I never completely lost the Chicago traces, right?
Yes.
But I kind of put them in a better perspective, I think, as I got older and maybe wiser.
But it's I think this is another, we'll come back more to it. This is the signature Trebilcock feature, which is this ongoing engagement with the larger world. And fellow academics, that's real field work. To go and do those interviews in the field over a table and maybe with a candle, to be taking notes, but to actually talk to people about their experience and to see it firsthand. That becomes such a unmistakable element of your work. To come to the University of Toronto, you brought this multidisciplinary perspective with you to the law school, and maybe to say a bit about the development of a law and economics program here, but multidisciplinary and its larger orientation, how that took shape at the university.
Well, I mentioned the 1-month boot camp at the University of Rochester and the year at the University of Chicago. So when I returned from the University of Chicago in 1976, the faculty, at my urging, had hired Rob Pritchard, a former student who just completed his LLM at Yale, and he and I launched the Law and Economics program together. He, of course, subsequently became my dean, then the president of the University of Toronto. Subsequently, we again persuaded the faculty to hire Ron Daniels, a former student of mine.
Whatever became of him.
Anybody keep track of him? Yeah.
And I ran the program for a number of years. And then when he moved on to become dean, and then later president of the of Johns Hopkins. Ed Iacobucci and I ran the Law and Economics program, and he became my dean. Right?
The Midas touch, there's no doubt. I'm waiting for my appointment, but we'll see. But you know, Michael, it was, I could tell you as a student too, the impact you had on me personally. And having come from Alberta, as I mentioned, Edmonton Oilers, Alberta, I studied business there, and I came to law school, and I didn't know what competition law was. I had no idea. But I remember those weeks we had, the law and economics weeks or whatever they called them then, and your presence on the stage firstly was so captivating, and the experiences that you brought, they came through. That the Chicago school, The markets will figure something out, figure it all out, and then your development work. And for me, it brought all these worlds together. And people ask me, what do you love about this area of practice? It's the interdisciplinary nature of it. And your curiosity as a human being and as a teacher came through and really lit in me the seed of how I got here as well. And I think that's reflective of so many students over the decades that have benefited from your scholarship and teaching.
It's what one of your colleagues refers to as your intellectual pluralism.
Yes.
Another used the term ecumenical perspective. That is the broad perspective, not simply in philosophy and orientation, the broad command of many subjects, but I take it that's what became an exciting part of the experience, is the multidisciplinary point of view at the law school.
Yes, it wasn't just law and economics. When we launched the law and economics program, we also launched an interdisciplinary program in law, legal theory, legal philosophy, and another program in health law and social policy. Caesar Wright, somebody commented 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago at Utah's conference, moved legal education into the university, but it was not of the university, into the university, but not of the university. But in the early going in law and economics, we had all kinds of cross appointments with folk from the business school and the economics faculty. We co-taught courses together. We wrote articles together. I taught them law. They taught me economics. And right now, I'm starting, Brenda, you forgive me for mentioning this, I'm starting work with Canada's leading family law and feminist scholar on the appropriate role of private ordering in family relations, right? I'm kind of a freedom of contract guy. Brenda's become a very close friend of mine over the decades. I don't know whether we can pull it off, but why not try, right? I think it's actually an important issue. The partnership life model of marriage gets reconceived, all kinds of intimate relationships. What is the role for private agreements on the nature of these arrangements? I actually think it's an important issue. So let's see whether Brenda and I can make common cause. Maybe we'll blow out. I don't know.
To look ahead a bit, thought about the future. Isn't this perhaps a necessary foundation for good legal education in the future? That is, a multidisciplinary perspective, a realization that individual policy domains are not in watertight compartments, that the successful lawyer of the future is going to have to be a bit of a political scientist, an economist, a sociologist, to have a broad perspective, and that's the preparation for practice successfully in the world ahead.
That's my belief. That's my firm belief. It's fundamental to my whole personal credo. We have a book coming out any day with Ninette Kelly and myself, and Jeffrey Wrights, the former chair of the sociology department, sociology on
Yikes.
on contemporary Canadian immigration policy issues. It turns out that sociologists have a lot to say about whether immigrants do or do not integrate well. And so we enlisted Jeff. Tragically, he passed away 3 weeks ago, wintering in Mexico City with his wife. She won't see the book. Died suddenly, but I enjoyed working with him. Tragic that he passed so suddenly.
But what a illuminating path for a university for the future. that is to seek to realize the integration of its different capabilities, the bodies of knowledge, to bring them to bear on addressing pressing social problems. That if you think what's the way out of the future, where do the solutions to seemingly crippling problems lie? It seems to me that you showed us the path.
Well, you shouldn't diminish your role in this. You've often been a role model to me in the competition area, and as a sort of maybe uncharacteristic in current times, cosmopolitan. You've traveled the world, right? You've traveled the world, advised governments all over the world, developed and developing. You know, I like to think I've traveled and taught various places. My list is minuscule compared to yours. I know I'm not supposed to be interviewing you.
No, we can keep doing that. That's fine. But in the sense of influence, it was indeed 30 years ago that I met you first in Venezuela. It was a conference in Caracas. And I think you remember a phase of your academic life when you were a junior Pearson, basically known as Hey You. I remember two things about the event. One is that you noticed that when you spoke with Michael and you had one of these name tags, Michael was actually trying to learn your name. And in Washington, you notice that when people speaking to you, there's a style of sort of scanning the room to think, is there anyone who can help me out more than this person here? And their heads bobbing around, just scanning. And you could be talking to him saying, yes, your pants are on fire. Yeah, good, very good. When these people look at your name tag, they're saying, is it really worth my time to talk to this one? When Michael spoke to you and looked at the name tag, he was trying to learn who you were. And to have a senior established leading figure in the field who showed what field work was worth, right, who showed why it was important, who showed why you wanted to do this work, that had just invaluable impact on, and the room's filled with people who've had that touch, but that was something you pioneered long ago. And one thing that's striking that you can see in the comments, and I just wanted to mention again, is that in this position at the university, you began to build a community, not just of the academic scholars, but as the dean was saying before, a deep connection to the profession within Canada, across borders, across the world, in the solarium. How did the workshop start? How to build that? I mean, it was, no one's going to accuse the solarium of being too spacious or having a good climate control system. They did have heat in the summer and cold air in the winter.
Yeah,
did that. So on average, it was fine. But about how the workshops developed.
Yeah, well, I take only partial credit. I mean, we had a law and economics workshop that met every couple of weeks, but also a legal theory workshop that met every couple of weeks, a legal history workshop that met frequently, a constitutional law workshop. I don't know what I'm missing, Yuta.
That's good.
Yeah. So it was
a good start.
We tried to go to some of each other's workshops. We tried not to be narrow-minded. And I didn't think over my 50 years on the faculty ever divided around or developed serious fault lines around these competing perspectives, whether it was corrective justice or distributive justice or feminism or law and economics. I think we were good, close colleagues of one another, which is not always the case when there's a risk of fragmentation or division. But that has not happened at our law school.
Michael, just on that, because there is, as Bill suggested, the complexity of the issues today. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And we spent, it feels like what you're describing, in many spheres. We siloed and we specialized, and it worked because we were on the wings of the integrated thinking of your early work and people like you who thought in this integrated way. And now it seems like the complexity issues require this again. As a discipline, how you personally were able to maintain that curiosity, but also still be at the thought leadership. I mean, I have the list of all the areas when you go on his bio, the areas of expertise. I mean, you literally can't memorize it. I try to memorize things, you can't memorize it.
But just for completeness,
yes,
just for completeness, here are the areas of mastery. I mean, a number of academics, many of us are famous for having quick and shallow minds, glib observations about a lot of things, but no real command of any one. But these are the fields in which Michael has put an imprint. It's antitrust, contracts and contract law, consumer protection, economic development, immigration, regulation, trade, institutional foundations of policymaking, equity and fairness in policymaking. I find it a bit depressing to read the list.
It is. It's inspirational. It is.
And these are not intermittent tourism developments to selected places. To go through the list and to see the wide ripples of the scholarship, it's a bit more like Lake Superior, very big lake, very deep, and breathtaking in its scope. You've suggested a bit about how you moved from area to area, but how did you go about doing this? That is, we heard the consumer dimension, earlier experience in Australia, the experiences in Canada, competition law, all of the enterprises you were drawn into. How did you expand your field division to do all of this?
Well, that's an intimidating question.
I want very specific guidelines.
We want to make notes. How to,
especially for the junior academics. I mean, it is breathtaking, but how did it happen?
Well, the modest answer would be that I'm a dilettante, and that I have a short attention span.
Yeah.
But I think I can give a more plausible answer than that. I started with consumer protection. Well, then I moved in Canada when we moved on to competition policy reform. Well, that's a major dimension of consumer protection, right? Competition policy. I was a representative, a vice president of the Consumers Association of Canada. So moving from consumer protection to competition policy was not a big leap for me. Then writing my book, The Limits of Freedom of Contract, that was my mea culpa from my time at Chicago. The limits of freedom of contract, not the virtues of freedom of contract.
You atoned. It's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all right.
But then, from competition policy to trade policy, that's an easy move, right? I happen to believe that trade policy is a critical dimension of competition policy, that is international competition.
Yeah.
Something that, not you, but some of your senior officials seem
we haven't noticed, Michael.
Maybe.
seem difficult to grasp.
Yeah.
Right? But in a small country population-wise like Canada, 40 million people, or my former homeland, New Zealand, 5 million people at the bottom of the earth. I mean, the idea that we could ever conceive of becoming self-sufficient and everything is ridiculous, right? So the idea that you can have an effective competition policy without an effective trade policy, for me, is complete nonsense.
And immigration, the mobility of human beings.
So now I move on from consumer protection to competition policy to trade policy. Now I move to immigration. Well, if it's good to move goods and services and capital across borders, why not people? Why not people? You know, I was sitting in the atrium today at the law school, watching the students go by, and I was stunned, right? Compared to when I started 50 years ago in 1972, the majority of students there were women, and a large percentage were clearly visible minorities. This is a dramatic change from when I started my academic, and for the better, right? And for the better. So, you know, if you talk to Europeans about the European Union, they say it's focused on 4 freedoms, right? Cross-border movement of goods, cross-border movement of services, cross-border movement of capital, and 4, cross-border movement of people. And I would actually add a 5th freedom, and that is cross-border movement of ideas, including technological innovations. For me, all of these are connected, right? Goods, services, capital, people, and ideas. So I don't think the choice of my focus over time is totally erratic.
Well, and hardly. And again, if you're looking for a path ahead to understand the connections and how crucial they are, would seem to be a necessary foundation.
It is.
For getting out of the tunnel.
It is.
Ultimately. I mean, I think back of the time in the 90s, Michael, when I think there was a view that, you know, trade would not only increase global wealth, it would do that. That economic interdependence would discourage armed conflict, that countries would see a shared common cause in building an integrated economic framework, which might lead to deeper political integration, and that a benefit of trade, and I recall having a conversation with you before, is that one consequence of trade is that if you see something that's nicely done in another place, done by someone you don't know at all, it can be an object, it can be an idea. Right. You don't know them at all, but how can you not respect at a deeper level the person or the society that did that and created that it could be a source of greater empathy and understanding as well. Where did things go wrong? That is, where did we turn off the path? And maybe as a larger question, how do we get back onto it?
Well, of course, you and I, Bill, are sort of ultimate cosmopolitan, right? We've traveled the world, but clearly a significant percentage of the American population, maybe, and also the population of many other countries that have adopted extreme forms of nationalism or populism, they clearly don't think like us. Right? That's the challenge. And I, you know, when I've taught trade, the trade law seminar for, I think, 40 years before I retired, I believed just exactly what you described. It wasn't only economically beneficial, mutually beneficial, but it would lead to, through greater economic interdependence, not independence, greater economic interdependence would lead over time to a more cosmopolitan view of the world, right? I believe that, and I think it was true. I've just written a little piece. Right up to the turn of the 21st century, there were people like Thomas Friedman writing "The World is Flat," or the Lectures on the Olive Tree. Peter Singer, a prominent philosopher at Princeton, "The World